All right, what's up, everybody? Back. Just dropped off the kids. JC. Looking forward to talking to JC. So, uh, we're going to see JC on here. We're going to do another live discussion. He had some very interesting points or, thoughts around it, which I've never heard before. We're trying to think about it from like the vegans got it, inherently backwards. Um, and the last just where we finished off was like shooting a deer, right? Or in a sense shooting a deer is more vegan or less harmful than not. It's JC, there he is, my man. Appreciate it. JC's in the guest room. How I bring him on, let me see. Here we go. JC, bam, there he is. JC, what's up, my man?
Hello. How you
Good,
doing?
man. Doing good. Yeah, appreciate sorry about the got the kiddo soccer till 7:30. So got some time. And yeah, man, appreciate had a good discussion going and looking forward to continuing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Same here.
All right, so just to kind of recap or where we left off, as far as looking at from actually shooting and killing an animal and it in the forest, right, or in the wild, is more vegan or in a sense or more ethical than to buy plant foods from the store. Is that did I
Yeah.
get close to?
No, that's pretty much what I'm saying. Um, if I'm allowed to elaborate just for a second, I think we need to go a touch meta in some regard because we've got to think about what we know and the suffering that we can control in the world, because there's always some level of suffering in the world going on at all times, and it's how much do we know and appreciate that, and how much can we actually control. For example, in the soybean industry, which is obviously dominated by cows, so obviously cows eat a lot of soybeans, but large swathes of the soybean industry is done in third world countries where people are living below the poverty line. So it's not just animal suffering; it's human suffering that goes into these industries. Um, and so I think knowing that there is the set amount of suffering that comes with killing a deer, I think that that is somewhat more ethical than having some somewhat intangible, unknown amount of suffering that goes into the food that ends up on my plate. But this isn't feasible for the majority of people. I do want to like preface that as well.
Yeah, I mean that's true, and I always try to steer it back to you personally, right, and not a lot of the comments and a lot of the responses we tend to say like, well, everybody can't do this, or right, and we look at ways around what we're really trying to not answer, in my opinion, which is why personally do you contribute to what's happening to animals. And I think I remember you saying right before we got off was that you personally don't hunt, and one of my questions that I wanted you to I want to hear is why don't you hunt, just from your own thoughts and reasoning. So that was one of the questions I'd like to know.
Yeah, of course. I don't hunt because it's first of all not feasible, really, for me in the UK. I don't have a gun license, and we're not very liberal when it comes to archery and bow hunting either. And so, for me to go out and hunt my own deer, it would be incredibly impractical and very expensive. But that said, what I'd have done, and what I think more people should do, is every year in the UK, especially in Scotland, they have to put on deer culls because deer are an invasive species and they damage the wildlife. They were introduced here and they kind of overrun a lot of the forestry. And so I will buy some of the deer meat from some of these culls, which were having to be done anyway, and I would hate for that meat to go to waste, and so I will still eat that meat as well.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. How about it from an empathy standpoint of killing another being? Have you thought about it from that perspective, or
Yes, so I mean, I think we go to the idea that me living in any sense of the word, and me eating food, no matter where I get that food, is causing the death of an animal in one way, shape, or form. It's whether or not I can know that animal and whether or not I can, um, if I have a direct hand in that animal's life. And we might just have somewhat of a disagreement here, but I feel like it's more ethical to have a direct hand in, and have a kind of forefront of knowledge of the suffering that you are causing in the world versus having a level of suffering that's unbeknownst to you.
okay? Yeah, I mean that's interesting. What about from the rights perspective? So, right, back to
Um,
that deer, what gives us the right to go out and hunt the deer? Uh, obviously not necessary, but we do it for food, and we say that we had to call or kill those deer anyway, so let the deer not go to waste. But before we got there, we chose to dictate or to from our own I mean justification, we say we're going to go take that animal's life away from them without asking them. They didn't give permission, nor do we know, or we can uh just believe to be true is that they don't want to die, right? They value
yeah,
their life just as much as we value ours.
yeah, and this is the thing. I'd be applying that to every rabbit and rodent and bird that gets killed in the farming industry. And I think instead of kind of, I feel like that's a tiny bit of a deflection. So I'll try and keep as onto this deer as possible. But we, as the human race, are quite an exploitative being, and so in all of our lives and in all of what we're doing, we are constantly exploiting our resources that are in the world, and it's how can we manage those resources in such a way that we can still live personally fulfilling lives. Um, and it's seeing where we can balance that out basically. For example, I mean, you drove your kid to soccer, and that released a level of emissions basically
Hmm.
into the air, and it's more convenient for you to do that, of course, than to walk your kid to soccer and
Yep.
walk back. But yet you choose to drive anyway. And I mean, I'm not one to criticize you driving there because I think that's considerably more convenient, and it's a better use of your time. And now you can come back onto here and spread a message. And so life is all about trade-offs. And so I guess when it comes to the deer, it's whether or not the trade-off of its right to live can be weighed against the trade-off of the right to my right to basically live, and also um, balancing out the well-being of that individual deer versus the well-being of the animals that I can't know what level of suffering they've gone through. Basically, does that make some sense? I'm happy to elaborate more.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and it's again, I've never heard it before, or really talked to someone that thought about that way. It's very, and I applaud you for it's very creative, and you really thought through this. And I think as we, and again, not know how old you are, but we, as our journey through life, we continue to learn and change our ways. We come across new information, and a lot of it is what we were brought up, what we were taught when we were
Yeah,
brought up. So I think these discussions help. I think if people come across and hear and different opinions, or it's something I really never heard of. Like I said, it's a different thought process, and one that, again, I could not. I say I can't take, um, only in a sense of, there's no reason for me to. I still find the whole
yeah,
necessity thing, something that, if it's not necessary, I'd rather not, and I'd err on that side. But to me, again, I'm not, there's not many people like you, where usually it's, animals, they don't care about the animals, right? And I really want to get down to, do people, do you really care about that individual animal's life, or how they see their life, how they, a lot of it, we think that all deer are the same, right? Or all pigs are the same. And but each individual, right? We don't we tend to lose the value of that individual's life to them. And it's not, and that's where I think I've learned about speciesism. Have you heard of that word or
yeah.
term before?
I have indeed.
So, to me, speciesism, right? Like you said the human race, right? You talk about the human race, we get to kill the deer, or choose to kill the deer, based on what we believe to be a good or better thing. Before we got there, before we can get there, though, back to the basic rights, or the, basic fundamental rights of, we should have the right to our own life. And, I think that should be applied across all animals. And so we shouldn't get to dictate or eliminate that animal's life, regardless of whether that's a good or bad decision. So that's where, I try to, and it's how we treat the animals too. Is something that I also think we lose sight of. So I tend to keep it keep that keep that in the frame of mind during these conversations.
Absolutely. And I think speciesism is a really interesting sort of system that I think we need to be aware of, especially in regards to not just species and how we interact with other species in the world, but how we interact with the world as a whole, and the ecosystem, and kind of nature in itself. And it's always trying to think of how to kind of present a few new information. I guess one interesting thought experiment that I give myself, and I don't kind of go through this too often, um, but I will eat, and I don't. I do make efforts to try to avoid it, especially when I have full control over what I'm eating. But for example, if my family has bought some meat, or I'm going to a friend's house and they put meat on the table, and that's the only food that I have access to. It's typically I will eat that and be grateful for it because it's been cooked for me, and I don't want to be. There's this, these are some interesting conversations that we this these are where the kind of nitty gritty is, basically, in that I I find that in those situations when the control is somewhat out of my hands, I feel like I don't really want to go hungry at that point, to say to the friend and kind of cause that sort of imbalance by saying I don't want to eat that food because it's factory farmed, even though I really abhor factory farming.
It's a tough conversation. I think when you could wear one of these shirts over to their place before when you eat and you don't have to say anything. uh,
Yeah, I think
to me, it is a difficult situation. I think a lot of people handle it differently, and when you are around people that I'm going to say love and are friends and are used to, and then if you make the change, if you're talking or not wanting to bring up the conversation is tough. But what is tougher is what the animals are going through. So there's ways to, I think, bring up. And again, you're super smart, and you have great vocabulary. You can find ways to share just information and seeds that I think people will pick up. And a lot of people don't know or they don't realize. And I'm going to say that if you feel better or you want to share the good experiences that come with eliminating the factory farming, because you and I mean, I think we all know that it is a really terrible industry, and we need to, I'm gonna say, completely eradicate it, right? I don't think that there's any business to be breeding animals into existence to slaughter and kill them for food. It's insane. And if you think about the numbers, like billions, over 90 billion animals, this is unbelievable. I mean, it's the biggest atrocity ever, and it goes right by us and we don't think anything differently. So I think having conversations, dropping seeds, or making people have discussions or having discussions, and not being, I've seen a lot of militant or a lot of like very aggressive behaviors, and that doesn't solve anything. And so I think having people being able to have conversations and be able to understand that these are decisions, right? We were brought up this way, right? This is all we've known 20, 30, 40, 50 years, 60 years, whatever age person you're talking to. They haven't thought like this before, and society makes it normal, makes it right so we don't see it. They even hide it very good on the roads, but I really try to showcase, the slaughter trucks on the road. And it was 97 degrees out driving back, and I remember all the pigs were outside or as they were driving, they were just trying to get wind. And we're putting these animals through this, right? We're paying for this as they go ahead and slaughter and they sell their meat, and we just fund this entire thing. So I think I'm a little long-winded there, but what I think, by not saying anything at all in those situations, or eating and doing that, to me, and it's easy for me to say it because I'm already there, it would be obviously a tougher decision to do there, but I think by eating it, you're actually supporting it. So to
yeah, so
it's tough.
yeah, and I admit that I in see, I wouldn't say that I'm supporting with my dollars in the same way that people do when they go out and buy this food with the intention of that. But I am in like by proxy supporting it by eating it in the first place. But the food has been cooked, and if in that moment I say I'm not going to eat this, then it will go to waste. And so I'd rather that the animal didn't die in vain, effectively. And so there's a level, and then realistically, that the critique would be, should I mention afterwards and say that maybe we should be looking at kind of eating more sustainably. But the I think the issue is I can't push my ethical worldview on the majority of people because it doesn't work like that. And effectively, because I rely on effectively being somewhat of a modern day hunter gatherer, buying food that supermarkets and other stores are going to throw out anyway, and that's where I get the majority of my nutritional needs. And so I'll be managing all of my nutrients by that. And you need to have quite a solid level. And I'm not no expert, but I try to have a good level of understanding of what nutrients I need and need to put in my body. And so I'll be making sure I balance that, and I need to know how to cook to buy all of these food that is about to go off. And this could be all veg as well. This isn't just meat specifically. And I think that is the most ethical way that I can eat. But I know that for most people that isn't feasible, and so I can't push that onto people. And so it feels hypocritical of me to say, um, "Hi, I've just had this nice meal of chicken you've made, but I think we should be eating slightly more ethically," and then say, "But by the way, I don't think you're going to be able to eat as ethically as me." It just, you see how that sounds a bit wrong in some regard.
Yeah, but I think everyone's situation is different, right? Like, and we're all in our
Yeah,
own unique situation. So I think what works for you doesn't obviously work for me. I mean, we're not, my family and I for sure would not be picking up scraps from the restaurants. And I mean, we like, that's just not feasible. That wouldn't be in our, go ahead.
yeah, it's not scrap. So I was just gonna just before, it's not, I'm not going to restaurants and saying, "Hi, can I have your scrap food?" It's specifically supermarket food, so stuff that's in packages. It's just as good as any food. It's just got the last day of its best before date,
Got
and
it.
all supermarkets, you'll have that in America as well.
Correct.
Are
Yeah.
you in America
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
Canada?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but you basically, on the last day of the best before date, all of this food, vegetarian, meat, the whole lot, gets chucked out the back door, and that is the most egregious part of the food industry for me, is the sheer amount of waste that happens. And so I try to minimize that as much as possible.
Okay, yeah, and I, the scraps. I think that is a different conversation, right? If you go get scraps versus, to
Yeah,
me, you're actually you're secondhand supporting the industry because I'm gonna say that you're right. Your money is going towards these businesses that then purchase it. So, but I also think that you're doing the best that you can in your situation, but
but
it incurred in the meat regard, right? Or part of the
yeah,
animals.
but I'd say that you are also supporting those businesses as well. Just you're buying the vegetarian. So unless you shop exclusively from vegan supermarkets, um, you're still supporting the main supermarkets.
Yeah, I mean that's true too, right? I mean, I would agree to that.
Yeah.
You're right. I guess you get to choose though if you're buying the animal portion versus the the plant portion, right?
No, no, I actually don't get that choice. I
You
just
don't.
click buy food, and they just, because they have no idea what's going to be going off on that day, and so I think they might recently be putting in a they might have a vegan option. I've not seen it, and so most of the
Okay.
time I'm going in and I'm just picking up what it has,
I got you. Okay.
basically.
No choice. Yeah, and you're right. And to me, yeah, you don't want to go to food to go to waste, so you'll eat it because you have it. Otherwise, you're going to throw it out or give it to scraps. But
Yeah.
um, I think that that's obviously better than going out and contributing to, um, the obviously the industry directly. So it's the best. It's the best you can do, or in your choice, and that's I think more people should think that way or think in about it through that. And I think that we can all choose a better way. So,
Yeah, I definitely think more people should think about what they eat, for one, and then for two, think about how they live their lives in relation to the world. And vegans, I have a lot of respect for. Um, in that you've given a lot of that consideration, especially to animals, and you put a lot of that consideration onto animals. Um, I, I don't feel such a emotive response to people saying, but you're killing animals when you eat these things, or if someone's killed an animal to put food on your plate. I don't have the emotive response of that. What I do have is I do try and rationalize the amount of suffering that's gone into putting that food on my plate, and that comes into me having to put myself into the animal's shoe of that situation then occurring, basically. I just don't have that initial gut reaction that I think a lot of vegans have.
Yeah, but I think the main thing and the most important thing that um, I'm happy to hear is that you again you look at it from the animal's perspective, and um, that's to me where we lose sight of we're just eating a bacon sandwich or a turkey sandwich, right? We don't think about, well, number one, is it necessary for me to do that, or is it just that 10 minutes of pleasure and taste that I get from eating that, right? We could talk about the nutrients. I don't
Yeah.
necessarily need to get the nutrients from an animal. So why would I contribute to the violence and death of that specific animal for me to eat intentionally?
No, absolutely. I think in an effort to not go around and rehash some of the stuff we discussed about with the kind of damages to the animals in the farming industry in general. What I do want to focus on, I think, is the um, and this is a really difficult thing to kind of quantify, and I have to think about this quite hard. In that there's there's the kind of utilitarian approach to this thing, which is the idea that in all cases we should be trying to minimize the amount of suffering in the world as a whole. Um, and that's very difficult to have any level of understanding. And I think a lot of humans and a lot of people at the moment are quite numb to the amount of suffering that goes on in the world, human and non-human. And I mean, I'd be first and foremost focused on solving the non-human, the human suffering before then going into the non-human suffering. And the only way for me to guarantee, to the best of my ability, to that I'm not contributing to human suffering is to eat from food that is locally sourced that I have a connection to. And then secondly, and I'm not perfect at this. I need to make this very clear that like I'll be kind of preaching this style of living, but it's so hard to follow it. And so not everyone can, and I certainly can't follow it all the time myself, but I do try to the best of my ability. Um and so by eating locally and knowing that I'm eating from local farms, or I'm eating the deer that's been shot as part of a deer cull, and all of the things that come with that, and backyard eggs as well. I'd love to be able to have backyard eggs because I'm in full control of those chickens. And I don't know if you're pro or anti pets. That's kind of a gray area for vegans. But I think that when it comes to kind of keeping chickens, I don't really see any problem with keeping chickens that you just don't introduce a cockerel, the eggs don't get fertilized, and then you can eat the eggs afterwards. I don't really see where a problem lies there, but you might be able to enlighten me. There's quite a bit there to unpack, by the way.
Yeah, no, I was trying to write some of it down. That's okay. No, I appreciate the questions. Let me do it backwards. So the eggs, interesting about the eggs. My wife and we even talked about getting chickens and eating their eggs, and to me, I'm we don't need to. Um, and I go back to we don't need to. I also think that buying the chickens is kind of and eating and people realizing that you're eating and you don't even have to discuss, but you're kind of they don't know where it comes from and they don't have the story behind it, but so just by you eating it is supporting the industry as a whole. From what I also understand is that chickens and those chickens that you get all started and come from breeding chickens in general, which again we're keeping the industry and breeding animals into existence for our benefit and exploiting them without the choice is again what we're against. And so I think by default, um, I think against chicken eggs, um, eating them,
I'll jump in for
having a
I was just going to jump in for a second.
yeah, please.
If you're considering the breeding eggs, what I'd suggest looking into is there are some organizations that effectively, when factory farmed eggs, which luckily in the UK we have very little of them. It's trying to be phased out completely. Caged hen eggs. But in America, it's still wrought, and it's all over the place. And what you can do is after these chickens, unfortunately, they can live for years, but after about 18 months, these layer hens get slaughtered because they no longer can lay at the capacity that they're meant to lay. But what you can do is organizations will come and try to buy up some of these hens, but they have nowhere to put them and no people to feed them. And I think from the animal's perspective, they're already alive. They're already living their life, and it would be nicer to have someone who cares about animals come and buy and pick them up, and give them a nice life. When the the alternative is effectively a meat grinder where they then get turned into chicken nuggets.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely agree with all of that. It sounds like a sanctuary is what, they would go to, or, you take animals out of the industry and you raise them or you,
That's what I'm saying. It's actually it's mostly reliant on individuals. So it'd be reliant on people like yourself, because they can't keep they don't really have there's no money in organizations kind of keeping these hens eggs. They can't make money from them, and so it's really reliant in the UK especially on kind of individuals buying these layer hens and just trying to keep a few of them to support. And also, if they're going to be buying eggs anyway, it's much better to buy these old layer hens who still have years of life, basically, and keeping them and giving them a great life.
yeah, I'd agree with that. And, I think that's, a choice if you are going to do something that certainly wouldn't be against that. But I think by default, and I think it goes right into the pets too. You mentioned the pets and am I against pets? I think rescue pets, which is what we rescue them. Otherwise, they'd get sent to the slaughter or shelter, killed or euthanized. So I think that that's perfectly acceptable. But I think that we ultimately are against the breeding of animals into existence for our pleasure, right? For our pleasure or even our use. So, a lot of people that sell pets and breed them, from like pure, golden retriever, certainly against breeding animals into existence. So, same thing as cows, chickens, all the animals we breed into existence for food, same exact reason we'd be against
Yeah.
pets. But again, to your point with the chickens, turkeys, any type of animal that we could take in and home and give a nice life to, certainly the better. Could everyone do that? No. But just that mentality, and it's also why I stick to eating. I stick to talking about the animals that we all affect, right? We eat so much, and that's where I think the biggest impact that we can make is we turn ourselves and stop supporting, right, the what's happening to the animals in the industry,
Yeah.
which is also another question though, dairy. We didn't talk dairy, and nor do I know if you drink dairy.
So, okay, we've got a good discussion here that's about to happen with the dairy industry.
Okay, good.
Um, I okay, so where do we start here? Um, I I think I'll just come out and be I am well aware of the horrors of the dairy industry, and it's one of those things where I still and will I do support the dairy industry through buying milk. I do my best to buy organic and as kind of, but that really isn't an excuse. The organic milk still they still go through a lot of the same processes, the same forceful insemination, and I guess the reason I do that and the reason I kind of am a part of that lifestyle is purely because it's a it's a cost basis thing for me. I don't have unlimited funds. I we all have limited money, unfortunately, and I do try to live as cheaply and nutritionally as possible. And whilst we don't need to drink milk or eat milk, and you don't need the nutrients that it gives you, the meals that it can make with milk are fundamentally sort of cheaper and more filling and sustainable for me to get that level of fat.
It's tough. It's a tough one. I can't. It sounds a big stretch to me. The level of
Yeah,
fat
no,
and
that's fine. You can.
um, and I what I would share this milk in itself is addictive. So
Mhm.
dairy in itself is addictive. It's got casomorphines in it. It's the same it's type of morphine that essentially keeps the babies, right? It's for the babies of the animals that are giving the milk, right? The mothers. That's what the
Yeah,
milk is designed for. And, as humans, it makes not it doesn't make sense logically for us to drink another species milk. So just from the logic perspective, it doesn't make sense. And from the addiction cycle, I mean, we start as kids, right? We're given milk and cereal, we put it in everything, and we drink it from birth, in a sense, uh, and it's normal for us. But I think that is, to me, you talked about the industry extremely terrible and one of the worst, but I also think one of the easiest things to give up. But I do think it's addictive, and I think it's very hard, and we're just so used to it, and it's around us, and it is in everything. And let me share this. Yesterday, was it yesterday? I broke my vegan streak, right? I think this is ridiculous, but I'm no longer vegan because I ate pickles. These pickles had milk in them.
no,
Yeah, like the
wow,
dill little sandwich pickles. Like I was just crushing
yeah,
these, and they were so good. And then I'm looking at the ingredients, and then it's like a ranch. It's like a ranch dilly. It's called ridiculous
oh,
or freaking pickles. I think they're freakingpickles.com.
yeah,
But it has milk in them. So milk is in literally everything. It's
it
just
is absolutely.
and it's milk chocolate, but it's also not in everything in a sense, because there are things that and you can go out, and we do find dairy free ice cream, and we do the same things that we that have milk in them don't have milk in them, like chocolate milk. They make a plant-based chocolate milk. They make everything that they make with milk, they make a plant-based version of it. And for the recipes, you mentioned recipes, I think that there's definitely some alternatives. Instead of this, use this. A lot of the oat milks and things are almost replaceable
Yeah.
in some of the recipes. But milk is a tough one, but I think it's also the easiest thing to do. Same thing with cheese, but it's addictive. We just have to we gotta cut it out.
No, I have to say, if there's anything that I feel like am somewhat hypocritical on, it is the milk industry. And it is something where it is very hard for me to give that sort of thing up just because of how it's in everything. But also similarly, the reason it could have been in the pickles, or the reason it's in so much of what we eat, is because of how companies effectively use milk to derive lots of they basically break it up into, effectively it becomes not milk anymore, but they're able to extract all of the whey and the proteins and there's so many chemicals that they can derive from milk as well. And so that's what they end up putting in these things to kind of emulsify, and yeah, that's why it ends up in everything. What I will have to kind of do a small nitpick is that, with regards to kind of, it's not logical for humans to drink milk. Humans have been drinking milk, and other animals' milks, for millennium. And even though you might be able to say that it's quite unnatural, it's been thousands of years that we as humans have been drinking milk, and so maybe it's time that we need to start weaning off of it. But I think it's definitely more unnatural, at least at the moment, for us to not be drinking milk, than it is to be drinking milk. Just to start there, and we might be able to kind of have a bit of discussion about that.
Yeah, I want to stay on the that we've been doing it for thousands of years, drinking other animals' milk. Are you talking cow's milk and breeding cows into existence and then milking them and then the milk industry? Or
So I'm talking. Well, I'm mainly talking in the fact that humans have been consuming other animals' milk for those thousands of years. We haven't had it on this scale, but obviously, if we look at Africa currently, the tribes in Africa are entirely reliant on their cow's milk and goat's milk to get the fat and nutrients that they need to survive. They wouldn't be able to survive if you removed the cow from the equation, or if you removed the cow's milk from the equation. They would no longer be able to survive in their tribe effectively. And that sort of thing has been in the case for hunter gatherers for thousands of years. We just haven't had it on the sort of factory farm scale. And these cows and these animals are treated better than the humans in some respect, in their fees and their lifestyle, because of just how important their milk is to that society.
yeah, that's fair. And my answer always to this is that just because it works for them and their tribe and Antarctica and Africa and all these different places where I don't have access to stores and things, right? Like I think obviously we can
Yeah,
justify that, and but but what I don't want to do is allow that to justify our own actions, meaning because a tribe does it there and because they're relying on it over here makes it okay for me to do it back here in the US or the UK or where I can go to the store and I have options. I can choose different options and show and support industries or not support industries. And I think we get to make that choice so many times every single day, even by little snacks, little stops that we make, and all the things and the food purchases that we do. We are buying and contributing to either we're supporting it or we're against it and we're fighting, or I'm saying supporting the industries that are not supporting animal um, harm and suffering.
yeah, and I completely agree, and I do think for the most part when people kind of use these examples of kind of niche tribes, and they say that, well, these guys do it and you think that's okay, therefore it's okay if I go and do it. I do agree that that's kind of a flawed argument. I will say that I will kind of stress test your position a little bit, which is, let's say I travel quite a bit. I go to cultural places. I was in Turkey a few weeks ago, and just last week actually, and I try to live like a local, in some regards. I'm not sort of the tourist in that respect, and I also am quite. I won't mention the name of the country, but I'm associated with a an African country. and I'm working with some of the people there to kind of build a better kind of a better government for that country. And so in talking to these people, I'll go and eat their food, and I try and engage in their culture as much as possible to learn about their culture. And obviously, that involves eating the meat, eating the milk, drinking milk, and all of those sort of things in the industry. And so I wonder, like, would you be able to say that I'm justified in eating and drinking those foods because effectively I'm going into that cultural space and I would feel like I would act almost more foreign when I'm trying to be and assimilate with those people by not engaging in those in eating and drinking of those foods and drinks. I would be sort of alienating myself from that environment. I understand that this is an edge case for me specifically, but just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's because you're a good person, right? I think that you care about how you make other people feel, and you don't want to make them feel uncomfortable or that
Yeah,
you don't respect them, or you're showing them respect by eating them, and that's their culture. And in fact, it's in cultures disrespectful not to eat their food, and so. Um, I think that you're putting yourself in that position, and that's going to be a choice, right? And that's something that I probably wouldn't do, or if I put myself in that position, I'd obviously make it known beforehand that I have these, call it beliefs, or that I wouldn't
yeah,
be participating in eating animals. So I think there's ways around it to share the knowledge, but I do think again in that situation where you are partaking in it, whether you talk about it or obviously not talk about it, you don't not bringing it up, you are silently supporting it. And to me, is it the worst case in the right? No, you have to make that decision yourself. Um, but I think by not saying anything or partaking in it, it is contributing to it.
yeah. I think it's kind of it does depend on how because when I go like for example in Turkey and I'm talking to some of the local street vendors and having chats with them and they invite me to come and share some of their food. Um, it's how much do I want to act like a like every stereotypical um British tourist, not American tourist, but and say, well, I think I don't want to have any of your food because my beliefs are saying that I just don't want to touch that. And even in the best way that I can explain it possible, it feels somewhat like I'm imposing my belief system and my kind of morality on these people who aren't really able to make those changes because vegan food isn't abundant in Turkey, and they wouldn't be able to kind of maintain that lifestyle. And it would feel somewhat wrong to me to try and say, well, look at me being the kind of moral authoritative figure on saying that it's wrong to eat meat and drink milk, basically. But that could be just a personal opinion there. But I think it's something that's useful to think about.
Yeah, no, and it's a challenging situation, and I, you know, it's tough, to be put in that situation. I think, you don't want to be disrespectful, but I think at the end of the day, these are your morals, right? And I think that, sometimes I would say most of the time we're hypocrites, meaning we think one thing, but yet we do another on some cases, and
Yeah,
we try to justify it in our own head. Right? I mean, like I know that there's people out there that are like he's no longer vegan. He had these pickles with milk in it. There's no question. That's it. It's over. I don't even know why he's still doing this. And we do the best we can. We're not perfect. We make mistakes, and we're always learning. And that's why I think I'm comfortable enough to share and have these discussions. And because I think I'm able to, I understand where people are coming from. I came from there, and I think we've been doing this long enough. And I enjoy, like, this is great to hear your perspective and your, because I, again, have never had that, heard of that before, and kind of some of your views and thoughts. And I just imagine how many other people are out there that have their own unique thoughts around
Yeah,
it,
definitely.
right? That they can share and people can take from, and then modify their own thoughts. And as we grow and learn more and we change, you might move and you might come to the US where there's, four awesome plant-based restaurants around you, and all, and that's all you're eating,
Yeah.
right? And so, you got to do the best you can. And I think the most important thing is you're open to change and open to hearing differences, and exploring that. And that's what I like about, like putting stuff out here like this and people commenting, and then now being able to actually hear your thoughts around it is, I think it's impactful.
Yeah, I think these sort of discussions and the way we can kind of open the door to these things are really interesting, and enlightening to a lot of people. And I'm definitely pro trying to put out the message and getting people to start thinking about the impact their lives have on other beings. And it's not just about kind of loving one another and being friendly with your kind of human neighbors, but also your animals. They have you gotta kind of think about them as well, basically. And so trying to bring that to the world in a way that's really approachable. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. I mean, I know you probably will think about, and you've taken a very amicable vegan stance. I really appreciate this. Has been a great conversation. Obviously, some vegans can be quite hostile when you mention sort of they feel kind of attacked if you come at them with the maybe it's okay to eat meat. And so I want it's like I wonder what your thoughts are on that with those sorts of vegans. Because personally, just final thing would be I think it actually somewhat taints and taints the kind of core of what they're trying to argue, and also it means that it's kind of built this image of what people think of vegans, and in a way that's kind of a negative light.
Yeah, I think, the people that the vegans that, and again, I appreciate your comments towards, our conversation. And I do feel like that's the most impactful. I think that's how you get, everyone's coming from different places. You got different thoughts. I mean, you got different parents and grown up and friends and influences, and you live in a different country. And so, but, putting that all together, we're here now talking about, what's in our capabilities, and what we influence and who we can influence and how we can help and what we can share and what we're called to do, however you want to look at that. Some of the vegans that really go crazy and really, you know, um, I don't know how to put it, right? Like, they're very loud, and they're, it reminds me of, there's a girl that does it. She walks in, she like goes to the restaurants, and they play like screaming pigs and gas chambers. Which, by the way, do you bacon pigs? Do they still there's do you know we gas pigs in the UK still?
Yes,
Is
no, I
that
do.
true?
We do gas pigs in the UK. What I actually do, this is a very side note.
Yeah.
I ensure that I actually watch vegan documentaries and vegan videos on a regular basis because I'm still aware that I eat meat, and I think it's more important for me to be aware of the suffering that I'm causing when eating meat than not being aware. And I actually think what we should be doing when at some point, I haven't kind of finessed this yet, or on what age would be suitable. But I think at some point when their kids are in high school, 17, 18, we should be educating them on the kind of horrors of farming. And I think that would actually push veganism more effectively. But you need to do it in the framing of it's not a kind of vegan propaganda, but it's just an education of the system that they're eating from.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's too late though. 17, 18. Why not talk to them when they're kids?
Yeah, I mean, we could be talking to them about it. I just what I was meaning was kind of showing them some of these graphic images, and I just don't know how comfortable I am showing them to really young kids yet. I mean, maybe I'm just a little too kind of hesitant and cautious about that, but it's something I don't really want young kids seeing pigs being gassed, basically.
If they did, right? I mean, it would be the truth. We wouldn't be making it up.
No.
It's actually what happens. And to me, looking back at it as if I was a kid, you know, I kind of wish somebody told that to me, or I wonder if if I saw that and someone said like, "Hey, you want a sandwich?" and that's got to happen, and I'd be like, "Wait, what?" Like, no way. But no one teaches your kids that. So we're just so disassociated with what's actually on our plate to what happens, and bacon
Yeah.
is it is. I mean, what we do to the pigs, and we know that the pigs, it has to happen in order for that bacon to get there. So we know that that's to be true, and so for us to, I mean, we're hiding it from our kids. So 17, 18, I think the graphic stuff. I mean, I think there's ways to do it, but we should be educating and teaching our our kids. So as soon as we found it, we started watching. We shared it with our kids, and so they kind of came along this
Yeah.
vegan journey with us. And to me, it's really up to them if they're out with their friends. Do they eat a chocolate bar or something or pizza, right? I mean, they're now getting into those situations where they have to make those choices. And but as parents, or I just share the information from what I've learned and continue to do that. And I mean, in our household, we're in control, and so what we wouldn't bring in animals anymore. And in fact, I was super pumped when I first, like, we had to grill, right? And we obviously went vegan, plant based, but then I had this grill that I'm like, oh my gosh, like, but I remember cooking animals on this, and like, so I looked at it from different perspective. And then as soon as we got that out, got a new one. Now this new fresh one has never had any, call it, has never, animals have been
Yeah.
cooked on the griddle. And it's this um, I'm going to say this. I'm not sure where I was going with that, but it's transition to like, eating, shifting all our, instead of eating, meat, and kind of wiping ourselves clean and eating nothing but plants.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that is such a respectable position as a parent. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of. I was almost expecting to hear well, we've been teaching our kids, and so we've been telling them that when they go out, they shouldn't be eating these things. But I have to hold my hands up and say I am thoroughly. It fills me with joy to hear how you're bringing up your kids. I think that's the most incredible and respectful thing, to kind of be letting them make those decisions, and that is exactly how we should be doing it. So all
Yeah,
power to you, basically.
yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that that's again,
I know it probably doesn't mean much to coming from someone across the world, but I felt like I should say that.
no, I appreciate that. Again, and it does. It just drives home that I think that my wife and I have we nobody's taught us how to do this or raise kids in this way. And I remember one interaction where one of Trace, or our oldest, was his friend, came over, and they packed themselves, like a beef thing, and said that that's put into the fridge, and that they can have that snack when they need
Yeah,
to. Well, I was like, well, like, no, let's not do that, right? And so we kind of got this, like, he doesn't need to send any food over with him. We'll handle it, right? And so, like, confrontation or some conflict there with like a parent saying that, oh no, like you're going over a vegan's house, that they're not going to have any plant based, or they're not going to have any food for him. He's not going to eat. So, and you want your son or daughter to be
Yeah.
fed, and you don't want them to go hungry. To me, didn't need to happen, or thought it was a little disrespectful to send that over with them. And so I said, no, like we're not going to eat that. Right. But you'll send it back. We'll get it back to you. So I think he ended up calling his mom. Mom came, and we just kind of had our talk and our differences there, but over it worked itself out, right? No big deal, and
Yeah.
we move on, and we learn how to adapt and put ourselves into a situation, especially with kids, and especially with other parents not knowing what to do is another thing that we learned, right? So if they go over someone's house, they're asking us, well, what can they eat? What do you? So their
Hmm.
parents are like, really into or trying to, give options to our kids as they go over there. So we've been really fortunate in our groups in our area or social environment to where they've been good, and everyone's been very understanding and accepting, and no other conflicts other than the one I mentioned was real early on. And so
I,
we learned a whole lot as we continue to, going through high school and soon to be college here in a couple years.
yeah, I guess my one question would be sort of if you were to take that situation of the um, kid bringing the meat into your house and you saying, um, "No, we don't really want that there. That's not really. This is a kind of vegan household." And then how you'd handle it if the reverse happened, and so your child was going into a meat eater's household, and they said he brought his vegan food and his vegan packed lunch, and they said, "No, sorry, we just don't really do that here. It's we don't have the vegan food. We only eat meat." What would be your opinion on that? Just to kind of get that
Yeah.
kind of both sides.
Yeah, sure. I think anyone who says that, I don't think that that's reasonable, right? Like the vegan food, when people say vegan food or vegan diet, right, we're talking about plants and vegetables and fruits, and the same thing that they also eat, because it's rare to meet people that only eat meat, right? Like true carnivores,
Yeah,
or they
good
eat
good good
any.
argument. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's hard to find people that do that, nor do I think people really think that that's healthy. There are groups that think that eating carnivore diet, like literally no plants, all meat, is healthy, which is almost, I think it's absurd if you look at the results and all of the studies out there. I think it's just a matter of time before I think more get out there, and I think you'll always have your followers that think that that's like the right thing or the healthiest option. I don't think it's reasonable. It's not cost effective.
Yeah.
It's just not really, shouldn't be in the conversation, but yet it will hang around. I think we're truly not designed as carnivores. We don't have any carnivorous instincts, and another reason why I ask, you could kill. Have you ever killed an animal, or what that would feel like to you, or thought about?
Uh,
And that you could if you had to,
yeah,
and I think same thing for me.
yeah. So I definitely could if I had to. I have killed fish. I've been fishing and I've killed fish before. I could definitely kill a normal animal. I've been in the rooms with chickens being killed when I was younger. And I think what would be quite enlightening to me actually would be to see. And I think this was something Mark Zuckerberg did. I don't know if you heard about this, but he went for a year where he ate the only animals that he was allowing himself to eat were animals that he'd killed himself, basically. And at some point, I would, when I have the means and when I have the ability to do that, that is my next step, I think. in that so that I have a very kind of intimate's the wrong word, but I have a very connected relationship with the food that I'm eating in every way, shape, and form. And so I am completely aware of the suffering that goes into that. That includes milk, dairy. So I'd be effectively going on the vegan diet. And if I wanted to eat meat, I would have to actively go out and kill an animal to then eat that meat. And I think that would be an interesting thought process to me. I definitely think people too often would be eating meat but not feel able to kill the animal that they're eating. And I find that very hypocritical. I feel able that I would be able to kill any animal that I eat, basically, with the exception of one. And I this is going to be quite surprising. I don't want to let you. I may let you guess. Do you want to guess what the one animal that I've eaten that was the one that I had the only emotive response because it's one of my favorite animals? And it's not your standard pets. It's not like a cute animal. It's illegal in most of the world, but it's legal in one or two parts of the world.
Horse,
No, it's whale.
whale. Wow.
So I was in Svalbard, which is the northern part of Norway in the Arctic Circle, and when I was there, in one of the places where we were eating, they served whale, and that was the only time I've had some food and gone. I got that wave of this sort of I've just really contributed to something horrible here. Even though the whaling industry is they've made it sustainable, it's not as environmentally destructive. I only felt that way because of the suffering that went into that animal's um,
Yeah.
being on
Well,
my plate, and
yeah,
that was really serious.
yeah, I mean, that's terrible, and you don't want to contribute to that,
Yeah.
and so why why back to you would only have to choose or eat meat if you wanted to. Why do you want to, or why would you want?
So I would want to because it would be a way of minimizing the net suffering in the world, for one, and so
All right,
it, it's it's
let's put that aside. Let's say that that's true or not, right? Let's use that. If that weren't true, if you didn't minimize the suffering, would you then have another
oh
reason to do
n-
if you
um I, no, I don't think so.
okay. So the main reason, so it's not for health, right? So meaning you don't have to.
No, I think there's it's like I said before, it's easier. And I personally find it easier to kind of keep a nutritional and balanced diet through eating meat. Obviously, I do that as sustainably as possible. But no, you're right. If I needed to push, and if it was kind of if I knew that by going and killing that one animal, I am that then there's no other suffering in the whole of the farming industry, and I'm just actively causing the suffering of this animal to put it on my plate. I don't think I could justify killing that animal because it was a nutritional benefit to me, even if
Okay.
it was.
Right. All right. So
Uh,
I think
but it's
we're good there. I think that and I think that that's the default mentality of everybody, but I think that people will say differently. So it'd be interesting. To hear other people's responses, like true responses, because it doesn't sound like oh, who cares? Like, who cares about animals, or who cares about that animal? I'm just going to eat it, right? Tastes good, right? And if
yeah.
you don't have to, I don't think that we're used to it, right? We're kind of disassociated with it, but I think deep down we don't want to contribute to killing or harming and their suffering for our taste and pleasure. It's just not worth it. It's not balanced there.
So I guess I'm gonna play a bit of a I'm gonna push a bit on the net well-being sort of thing. We do skimp over that a little bit, and you try and kind of say, well, let's not talk about that as much. But I think that's when it comes down to it. Net suffering and the amount of suffering we're contributing in our day-to-day lives is really important. And so I just am wondering why you kind of avoid that a little bit.
Well, when you say net suffering, are you talking like you're talking like well, yeah, like net suffering
So
meaning you're yeah, go ahead. Maybe if you can explain it.
so what I'm saying is that when I go out and kill a deer, I'm causing the suffering of one animal. So that's one animal suffering.
Yep.
And that animal provides me with a single deer could feed me for 3 months,
Yep.
basically. At least provide the meat for 3 months, which comes with all of the nutrients, the fat, goes nose to tail on the whole thing. And so, in replacement of those nutrients, I would have had to go to the supermarket and I would have to buy the replacement nutrients, not meat, but this would be lentils, soy, and all of these things. And the equivalent amount of nutrients that I would have to buy to match the deer, which was only a single animal suffering,
Hmm.
those nutrients that I'd be buying would be causing more suffering from the aspect of the human in third world countries making that food for us, the farming industry that displaces the animals, that kills on average tens and tens of thousands of animals every year to put that food on the table for us. And um, and so in those situations, there's more suffering that's gone into the same amount of nutrients that I'd get from killing that deer. And so by killing the deer, I am reducing the amount of suffering in the world to maintain the right level of nutrients for me to stay alive.
All right,
Did
back
that
to
explain it okay?
yeah, no, I think that was great. And, I think my default answer, and I don't think I swayed on it, is looking at it from the animal rights perspective. And it's that animal's right. We're taking that animal's life away, and we speciesism because our species, we think that by taking that away, I need it, right? Because right, I'm more powerful than them, so I'm going to take their life and eat them. And like I'm gonna say that that's okay to do. Uh, to me, that's taking that animal's right of life away, and that's the fundamental.
I would be saying that you're doing that whether you like it or not whenever you go to the supermarket and buy any food.
Well, but number one, there's foods that I'm gonna say that don't cause harm or suffering to animals. You can, there's veganic growing, there's gardens, there's right, like you can get food that I guess you can show or demonstrate that there was no animal suffering in it. And maybe I'll flip
And
the question really quick. If I could
mhm,
demonstrate all plant foods and give you a week's worth of food and showing you that they contribute to, call it, one mosquito being harmed, would you then justify the killing the deer versus the one mosquito and say that that's less suffering?
no, I'd be holding firm to that in that if you could show me that there's no suffering in those foods, and I'd have to caveat that obviously from a cost perspective as well, I can't overpay um, in such a way to kind of reduce suffering that there's only so much we can kind of afford to pay for these things. I would kind of ask, I'm assuming you don't only buy veganic farmed foods. I mean, it's unfortunate, but so these things just aren't feasible.
Yeah, no,
And so,
it's true. Definitely not feasible, but I still go back to that animal's life. Like the choice that I'm making, we're taking that animal's life away, and I think we might go round on this of we're taking the animals, but I didn't. We're not the farmers, or we're not the people that make that decision to how they, control their pests or their, uh, protect their gardens. But even then, looking at it from a rights perspective, I have my property. I can essentially protect it, and if I put traps and an animal comes onto my property from an animal rights perspective, right? Like they're violating our property rights and they're,
Yeah.
ideally don't want to kill them, but maybe trap them and take them somewhere else would be more, the humane option. But it's not perfect. Certainly never will be. I don't think, not in our call it lifetime. But
Yeah, not in our lifetime. I guess it's just something where we seem to have a sort of disconnect in the idea that when you buy your vegan, I'm going to use Beyond Meat as an example, this vegan junk food that uses a lot of soy.
mhm,
Um, I feel like there's not a sort of appreciation on your side as much of the sort of like there is fundamentally animals that are being killed. And if I could show you that, I'm gonna flip the mosquito question onto you basically, which is if I could show you that for every kilo of soybeans that you eat, two rabbits are killed every single time you eat those kilo of soybeans, basically.
yeah, I
Now,
think
rabbits wouldn't be the right example, but
right off the head, I'd say yes, only because again, the animal right. I don't need to eat animals, and they're not intentionally killing those animals in order to provide the soybeans. So I think that's my default answer. But and I'd like to elaborate, but JC, we got to cut it short. I got to go pick up the kiddos from practice. So
no
got to
worries.
end
This
it.
has been a great chat. I really appreciate this, and it'd
Yeah,
be great
man.
to have another chat at some.
Absolutely. So again, if I try to come on often, so I'm say click the button, or even if we keep missing each other, feel free to schedule something, and we'll make it happen. But yeah, I appreciate your time too, and your honesty, and again, I think a lot of people benefit from hearing this, and again, appreciate your time.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate your time too. Thank you very much. And you're the one YouTuber I've now got notifications on for. So
Hey, I
I will.
appreciate it, man. Thanks for subscribing
No
and
worries.
getting notified. Appreciate you,
Yeah, of
JC. Have
course.
a great
And
night. All right.
yeah, absolutely. You too.
Thanks, bud.
Good night.